Personally, I've never subscribed to the idea that you could balance big powers between China and US, for example, specifically. I think that's a bit of to me, hubris and not realistic. You can't use your surgical skills in politics, I don't think. Different fields. And anyway, in surgery, patients are anesthetized. And I remember him saying to me that politics is the art of the possible, not of the art of the impossible. For Singapore, I would say a starting point is we take the world as it is, not as we wish it to be. No matter how much we wish it to be, some people wish the world to be more friendlier, to protect small countries, to find space for all countries. But that's not the reality. I mean, one of the reflections, I think, across generations of Singapore leaders has been what is articulated in the Million Dialogues. The strong do what they can, the weak suffer what they must. And so, from our point of view, we have tried to be useful to both our neighbors as well as to big powers and middle powers. I would say our foreign affairs as well as defense diplomacy is very eclectic, and we try to find common ground. At the same time, working with a group of like-minded countries that have the same values and our interests are aligned. And I think that's worked largely for us. And over time, I think we've managed to establish ourselves as a useful interlocutor, somebody that doesn't have vested interests beyond national interests, which they can understand, that doesn't try to manipulate others with your views, but also gives honest assessments. Personally, I've never subscribed to the idea that you could balance big powers between China and US, for example, specifically. I think that's a bit of to me, hubris and not realistic. But within that space and when big powers are also filling up their data banks, for example, they want inputs, third-party inputs. And that's where Singapore can be useful. Because we're seen as a system that both accommodates East and West, if you like. Partly language, partly our multiracial composition, but partly because we have a first-class diplomatic corps, we have a very good civil service, and information flows thick and fast through our system. So we give distilled views which stand the test of time as well as experiences.
Military diplomacy is your hallmark of your tenure. The Prime Minister called you the chief defense diplomat, highly regarded in the circles by your peers and counterparts from within the region and outside. How did you grow into this role?
So our task, I think, is sometimes explaining that and trying to find common ground and trying to get countries to stay away from the red line. Not that they didn't know it, but having a third person from Singapore say so adds weight to that view and tells them that if you want to cross this line, please think twice, if not more than that. And you have to decide whether that's worth achieving your core interests and at what price. And you know that you have become effective when the exchange gets a bit more fluid. Sometimes you have meetings where all you do is read what prepared lines for you, and your officials go through it and say, this is our position, he reads that. But you know that you've been effective, and I think this happened quite a few times with the Chinese counterparts, when they put down their notes and they want to start talking. And then it becomes very useful. So when others assess that you're not just being polite, or you always have to be polite, but beyond being polite, that you're also trying to speak honestly and giving your point of view, I think they make time for you and they find your remarks and inputs valuable. I didn't enter politics by design. It didn't work out that way, and as you know, I was a practicing surgeon, a cancer surgeon, and quite a busy one with growing practice. The challenge became when, after I was elected, that I was asked to join government. And I remember the phone call. I was actually in my clinic, seeing patients. In between patients, receptionist tells me, then I think it was DPM Lee, who was tasked to call me and said, "We want you to join government." This was in 2001, after the elections. Yeah. And that we're going to have an economic review committee. I'd like you to lead one of the groups. I was thankful that they arranged for me to speak, because I had no clue what being in government meant. Put yourself in my shoes. You've just been training all your waking hours as a surgeon. You had been sent by the government to top cancer centers in New York, in Houston, in MD Anderson, and you've seen the best systems, and you're trying to come back and practice those standards, and then almost out of the blue, you're given the decision to stop and change tack. You can't use your surgical skills in politics, I don't think. Different fields. Yeah. And anyway, in surgery, patients are anesthetized. PMGO arranged for me to speak to both DPM Lee at that time and Mr. Lee. And I jumped straight into it without having to give him a long preamble and says, "I don't know anything about governing." So I basically wanted to ask him, how long does it take, do you think, for me to find out? Not for others to find out. I think I would know first. He said 6 months.
So at which part did it click to you that, okay, I can do this, and this is something that I can see myself doing for the next X number of years?
Well, that wasn't a frame. I mean, it's how do you measure effectiveness as a political office holder? Thankfully, in 2001, there wasn't social media. If today you enter political office and you use your yardstick as your social media response, I say give it up. Neither is that the real world. We know that there's a sad fact of social media. You have to either decide to tune out or tune in. You can't ignore it. You have to take it in. If you give too much, you empower those who are negative all the time. You create a momentum of its own. If you ignore it, it's not down to reality. Being a political office holder is need to be like helicopters, right? You have to go up, look at the larger policies, the larger terrain, and then come down and deal with ground issues, ferry people, goods, and you have to do both. I suppose as a government minister, you have to fly higher because you have to see the bigger picture. And the political genius, of course, of Mr. Lee was being able to find a policy which may not have been the best policy, a good policy with great outcomes that was acceptable to all. And I remember him saying to me that politics is the art of the possible, not of the art of the impossible. That takes learning. If I look back, there were certain policies I would have done differently, even if I think I'm right. And in politics, you must do something which you think is right, because otherwise you wear your soul down. If you constantly do what you think others think is right, then what they should be in politics, not you. So I think, was 6 months enough? 6 months was enough to tell me that the basic skill sets were there. I didn't have much of a problem understanding or grasping what the core problem was. The art of the possible takes a lifetime to learn. If I had another political life, I would want to do it again. The curse of successful countries, I think, is the belief that the set of conditions that you've inherited will be forever so. I mean, that's very natural, right? Chinese has a saying, 富不过三代. So how does Singapore guard against that? First of all, it's the standard of wealth. You don't want to be the country that's poor and dealing with unequal distribution. That makes it much harder, or even in the middle, right? The middle income trap. You want to be a progressive country. And I think part of the answer is that social compact, the political understanding between elected and electorate, to have a common understanding of, some things may be good, but we can't afford it. And we may have to find different solutions or different expectations. Or some things are too expensive and we should learn to live with less. Or some things we are not investing in that we should invest in now, or make the more. It was a difficult decision because it's a completely different field and you're giving up something. Never mind the quantitative aspects, but it will be futile for everybody if you change and you neither helped your patients then or helped the country. So that was my primary concern. One thing led to another, and this 24 years down the line, and I'm retiring after that. People ask me, what are you going to do after you retire? I honestly haven't thought about it. It's not as if if a cabinet minister, you go to work thinking, what do I do after I retire? If you're doing that, I suggest to you that you really ought to retire. But I probably want to take a month or two to reflect on how I can add value and what is it that I would, find in a comfortable space. I'm coming from more a position of anything beyond this is good to have, not need to have. And as I said in my short essay, in my Facebook post, the best is yet to be, and I want to believe that. I think the recent elections, among all the positive aspects, obviously the PAP is very happy, and I'm sure Prime Minister Lawrence Wong and the Cabinet is very happy with the results and thankful. But to me, when someone who is going out of politics, it was particularly gratifying because the vote, the results, were an affirmation of rational and progressive politics. So I think the government, the people as much as the government, has the responsibility to decide what kind of politics they want. And someone can say, well, you're saying that because you're in a ruling party. I don't think so. You want rational politics where good policies are supported and bad policies are not supported, whatever political color you are, that there is enlightenment to say, well, that's a great idea, but if everybody is asking for more and you're giving it, who are you going to tax to pay for it? Uncomfortable questions, reality questions, or for some to say, well, that's a good idea, but this is the downside. And more with educated Singaporeans, that discourse must come up. If there was one thing, and I've been asked before, that decision from surgeon to politician, was it worth it? And I said, one aspect which was infinitely worth it was making new friends. I would have never met them otherwise. I'm a cancer surgeon and they don't really want to see me professionally. But you know, in Singapore, and this is aside from political affiliation, you really have the salt of the earth people, and as I said, you know, honest to goodness people. Just at the core being very honest, and it's got nothing to do with wealth. Some of the poorest people have been the most generous in my dealings with me, in their fellow citizens. And I think if there's anything that holds Singapore, it's them. So, you know, we promised to keep in touch. There's a very sweet lady who, during our Meet the People sessions, brings Yu Chak Kueh and Han Chin Peng, and she's promised to, if I visit them, to bring back that. And there's another lady that cooks for us. So all these little acts of kindness add up. We're all, at the end of the day, human, and we want affirmation. No human wants to revel in the climate of negativity and criticism. It eats our soul up. And if you're in that situation, and if you're creating that situation, well, good luck to you. I don't know how you can deal with yourself, but that's not the human experience that we yearn for. All of us, at the end of the day, want to be able to say, I've done this to the best of my ability. I tried to do some good, and if I have shortcomings, I apologize, but I tried my best. And a word of advice, if you ask for a word of advice, don't enter the politics to be thanked. It's setting a very high bar, and you may be disappointed. But politics in Singapore, I would say that politics is still an avenue when you can do good without compromising your ideals. And I would say that may not be so in other systems.